The wisest answer is often the one you're least prepared to give. What if the oldest wisdom isn't a creed, but a practice? Keep asking, keep doubting, keep refining. In a world that sells certainty like a product, philosophy might look like noise. Yet the quiet force behind Socrates is not a doctrine, but a method you can use in your own life. He didn't write a university curriculum. He walked into a marketplace and turned questions into tools. If you want to understand ideas, you don't memorize slogans. You learn to test them by asking better questions. Socrates believed that wisdom begins with recognizing how little you truly know. The phrase "know thyself isn't a boast." It's a discipline. He claimed he knew nothing except the fact of his ignorance. In plain terms, he refused to pretend certainty where it wasn't earned. That stance, oddly, is the most capacious form of confidence there is. Confidence built on continual inquiry, not on final answers. Consider a modern professional, a doctor, a consultant, a policy analyst. They often speak with the thick air of certainty. They use precise jargon, data dashboards, and tidy narratives to close debates. But behind the polish, the same question remains. What exactly are we claiming to know? And how would we know if we're wrong? Socrates would have asked, what is the definition of this claim? What would count as evidence against it? What would force me to revise my view? SFX, chalk_scratch. 2. The method is simple to describe and demanding to practice. He would pose a question. The other person would answer, and then he would press, gently but relentlessly, until the definition stretched, cracked, or revealed a hidden assumption. The goal isn't to defeat the speaker, but to strip away the illusion of certainty until a clearer picture emerges. It's not about winning arguments. It's about discovering which beliefs survive scrutiny. This is why the phrase professional knowledge can feel comforting and dangerous at the same time. Comforting because it promises clarity, dangerous because it can mute the critical voice inside us. When a specialist tells you something is settled, the question becomes, settled for whom? For what standards of evidence? Under what conditions could the claim be false? Socrates would push past the surface agreement to expose the framework underneath, the moral, the practical, the probabilistic assumptions that shape every claim. SFX, clock_tick, 1. 5. The surprise often comes when you map a complex idea into a simple form. A single, crisp definition can illuminate more than pages of rhetoric. But the moment you pin down one definition, another question emerges. Is this definition universally applicable, or only in a narrow context? Socrates preferred the latter stance. Be explicit about the scope, be explicit about the limits. The danger of certainty is not the inability to be wrong. It's the arrogance to pretend that your solution fits every human situation. Let us test this with a common topic: courage. A professional might say, courage is facing danger with resolve. Socrates would invite a closer look. Is courage present only in the presence of danger? If not, does fear define courage? Or is there a third factor, perhaps the choice to act rightly despite fear? If courage depends on facing danger, what about the courage to stand by a difficult truth when consequences are costly? The more you ask, the more the definition expands, and the more you realize how much hinges on nuance rather than slogans. SFX, soft_bell. 1. The turning point comes when you notice the effect of this practice on your own thinking. You begin to see where your beliefs rest on convenient habits, where they rest on inherited opinions, and where they rest on carefully gathered experience. Not every belief will crumble under scrutiny, but every belief you scrutinize becomes yours by choice, not by default. That ownership is a kind of freedom. The idea that you can choose which questions to honor and which to question is a powerful, almost quiet, form of autonomy. This is the essence of the Socratic turn. Life as a sequence of honest questions that produce clearer, more precise thinking. It isn't a rebellion against experts. It's a rebellion against the illusion that expertise ends inquiry. The best professionals use questions as instruments, not as weapons. They test their own claims before they ask others to test them. The Socratic habit trains you to listen as if you're learning. The modern marketplace of ideas loves easy answers because they're portable. A single soundbite can travel far, while nuance travels slowly. But slow, careful thinking has a sturdiness that quick certainty cannot provide. When you slow down, you begin to hear yourself more clearly where your cravings, fears, and biases push you toward a conclusion you wish were true. Socrates would call that a blessing, not a flaw. The moment you see your own bias, you're already farther along than most who never notice it all. This is where the mystery deepens. The more you question, the more you realize that truth isn't a trophy to hold, but a practice to live. The difference between a believer and a thinker is this. The thinker persistently tests what they hold dear, whereas the believer often holds on to what confirms them. The thinker accepts the possibility of being wrong and uses that possibility to refine. The believer fears the confession of doubt because it might reveal weakness. Socrates chose the harder path because it keeps the mind flexible. And flexibility is resilience in a world that never stops changing. SFX, distant_thunder. 2. So how do you bring this into everyday life without turning philosophy into a Friday night lecture? Start with a single, what would count as evidence for it? What would count as evidence against it? What would force me to revise my view? Then listen to the answer without rushing to judgment. If you hear yourself bristle, resist the impulse to defend. Instead, press for clarity. If you hear a quiet agreement from your own mind, welcome it, but ask what assumption it rests on. The aim isn't to chase a perfect system. It's to cultivate a living method that keeps your mind awake. To live Socratically is to live with a bias toward precise definitions, transparent assumptions, and a willingness to adjust when the data demands it. It's a disciplined curiosity that respects the messiness of real life and refuses to pretend that every problem fits a neat box. In this sense, the phrase Socrates professionals don't want you to know is less about secret lore and more about a practical habit. The habit isn't skepticism for its own sake. It's curiosity with accountability. It's the humility to say, I don't know everything, but I can learn how to ask better questions about what I do know. SFX, soft_rain. 2. And here is the simple takeaway you can use today. Treat your strongest beliefs as hypotheses that deserve regular testing. Replace the urge to be right with the discipline to be clear. When you encounter a claim that matters, turn into a question that can be debated, tested, or observed. The value of philosophy isn't in the final verdict, but in the clarity that comes from honestly exploring the questions that decide how we live. If there is a single sentence you carry forward, let be this. Clarity emerges when you stop pretending to know what you don't, and start practicing the skill of asking what would prove you wrong. Socrates would smile at that, not because you've found the final truth, but because you've learned how to keep discovering it. Utro, so as you go about your week, what question would you ask the next time certainty tries to slip into your conversations? Not a clever trick, but a real prompt. What would change if I asked just one more? Better question before I commit to an answer. Another daily habit to borrow from Socrates is slow, careful listening. When a colleague claims certainty, reply with a clarifying question. What exactly do you mean by that term? How we test it? What would prove you wrong? This isn't debate, it's architecture for thinking. In medicine, policy, finance, the same pattern reveals how easy it is to mistake confidence for competence. The trick is to map assumptions, the unstated premises quietly steering decisions. If you surface them, you can decide which to borrow and which to discard. You'll notice that sensitivity to doubt changes outcomes. A design meeting becomes a lab. A budget review becomes a controlled experiment in values. The mind loosens its grip on comfort and learns to tolerate the unknown. The paradox is this: the more you doubt, the more you can trust your own judgment, not less. The discipline isn't cynicism, it's responsibility. Let us try a tiny, practical ritual, a 5-question notebook. Each day, pick one claim about health, wealth, or happiness. Write it down. Then answer, what is the core claim? What evidence supports it? What would count as counter-evidence? What would force me to revise? If new data arrived, what would I change my mind about? What would be a worse conclusion if I stretched the data? 5 minutes, 1 page. Then share your questions, not your verdict, and invite critique. In this way, philosophy stops being abstract and becomes a bridge you walk daily. The Socratic method, ISNTA weapon. It's a tuning fork for thought, keeping your professional voice honest, even when the room wants certainty. The truth, ISNT, a verdict pinned to a wall. It's a horizon you approach by repetition, revision, and humility. What question will you ask next when certainty